Mira Business FM, the sound of success.
It's Mira Business FM. This is the Morning Drive. My name's Tim Elliott, and we're talking business. And I suppose once your business is on its way, how do you make it grow to the next point? That's kind of where we're going to go now. The golf's certainly buzzing. Big budgets, bold visions, new brands landing. Seems like every week, to be honest. And while we're in a region that's really good at launching startups and supporting the global giants, there's a problem really in the middle, or an issue in the middle. Lots of businesses get early traction and then they stall. But why do so many companies stall after early success is the question. Where is the hump and how do you get over it? Now, our guest this morning works right inside that pressure point. Nick Walsh is the founder, the CEO of Migrate, and what he does is helps companies turn early traction into repeatable weekly, monthly, annual performance in the golf without any of that agency fluff, it says here. Nick, nice to meet you.
Likewise, Tim. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I mentioned that kind of middle bit because that's where the issues are. You get your company going, you're encouraged to start, or you're an enormous multinational corporate international entity coming in. But it's the people in the middle there, isn't it? So what does that look like in terms of real companies? Let's start there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think first of all, kind of look at the sort of the global trend in our industry. And again, we've started a business pretty successfully, which is exactly as you said, all about creating that traction, building the middle of the market. When we look around the rest of the world, there is a real even split between the big legacy multinational companies. That middle of the market is much stronger everywhere else. And then you've obviously got your boutiques, startups. For us here, when we looked at this region, there's a real missing middle. So again, I've come out of working with the big global networks, publicly listed companies. Around the world, you've got private equity funded, really fast growing, sort of mid-level, 200-300 people agencies. They're specialized in particular services like commerce or CX or experience, so growth, and then they're specialized also in growth sectors in this region, so education, entertainment, tech, and there's a lot missing, and that's coming from, obviously I've worked very closely with brands and CMOs and procurement teams for the last 20 years of being in the region, and they're looking for those, and they don't seem to exist. So there's a missing middle as we've coined it.
Yeah. Do you think there's an element as well of here that it's quite fragmented in this region? We've got so many nationalities living side by side, so many different attitudes. Do you think it's really difficult to succeed with anything but, the broadest of appeal?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. To succeed, you have to have a very different point of view. A lot of the time, so we're working with around 20 established international agencies, and we're working on bringing them into this market. Right. It's always been a market they've been quite scared of for, whatever those reasons might be, payment terms, length of time it takes to be awarded, the cost of setting up here. So what we've tried to do is to say to them that when you're coming into this market, you've got to come in with a really specific point of view, and that specific point of view has to be matched to the needs of this market. If you can do everything in your home market, you won't be able to do everything here, first of all. And a lot of the times, international companies, they grow sideways, as I like to put it. They look for growth sideways. They move away from what made them special at the beginning. So companies that are coming in here talking very generic, a lot of people talk about this market being saturated, and it's saturated with people doing the same thing. Yeah. Where you can really get ahead is if you double down and you position yourself correctly for the market. There are lots and lots of businesses looking for specialists with specialist skills and specialist services, and that's where you can really get it right.
That's how you can stand out, I guess. Do you think there's also a sense that this is a society really looking for the next big thing? I mean, things move fast here, really fast in Dubai. It's kind of a symptom of the tech age we're in, and the kind of Dubai attitude, I think. It's almost as though any kind of amazing idea, amazing company, or amazing business, it's about time to bed in kind of thing in this environment. Does that make sense?
It totally does. So, typically when we spoke to loads of founders who had, I think the original stat was like 60% have failed. You don't seem to see the failure stats a lot of the time, but that's where people dip their toes in. Yeah. So the dipping the toes in kind of trend is typically people will fly over, they'll think there's a really interesting opportunity, they'll start to pitch some work, they'll maybe send a few people over, and that's the sort of halfway house, I think, of, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
But then if you're going to bed in, I think then there's that other feeling of let's go all in and let's put an awful lot of money in to start up and to get started. And I don't think that works either, because as you know, getting started here in this region is expensive, personally and professionally. So if you go all in, the chances are with not realistic expectations, I think that's really dangerous. If you dip your toe in, that's also really dangerous. So when we talk about bedding in, it's a really good way of putting it. It's actually about looking at things long term. So this isn't a place anymore for a quick win, a quick buck, a quick get ahead.
Yeah.
You've got to be, and actually any business in any country in the world wouldn't be looking to break even within the first few months. This is something you've got to be looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 years to actually build an entity here. That's what it takes now. So that's what we mean by bedding in. It's about realistic expectations, about transition. It's about establishing correctly. It's about connecting yourself in the industry correctly, and it's about good growth, not rushed growth. And that's what we mean by bedding in.
A lot of companies use that phrase, we're in market now. I mean, I always kind of thought there should be a definite article. It should be in the market now. But that's just me being pedantic, really.
Yeah.
Why is being here, being in market now, if you like, different from building weekly numbers, weekly, monthly, annual numbers?
You have to be in the market to succeed. I mean, we're a big believer in making sure that, again, you structure the right team that's here. There is no issue in terms of my belief empowering the business with knowledge from different areas of the world. If you have that, I think that's always a positive. We want to be the best region in the world in pretty much everything we do in every industry, but that doesn't mean we need people to fly in, fly out. I think you need to build the foundations here, and then you can power with maybe capabilities which might not exist here, but that can be done internationally into this region.
What are the first signs, Nick, that a business has a presence, it's kind of getting there, but there isn't any real momentum building?
Yeah, so typically, and again, for us, this is about the advertising, marketing, communications industry, but I would imagine this is quite similar for all. I mean, I think the first thing sometimes, and I talked about good growth, sometimes the worst thing that can happen is a very big or quick win off the bat, and that puts expectations up very highly. But with wins or with business gains comes cost, associated cost with that. And so what might be initially a really positive thing, and look what we've done, and look what we've won, and look what we're working on, comes with 10, 15, 20 staff, and the cost of 10, 15, 20 staff salaries is quite daunting if you're a middle of the market-based company with maybe 2 or 3 other, because also on cash flow, that's quite heavy. And if you aren't paid on time, or if you don't succeed or don't do a good job, that's where companies, I think agencies particularly, can get themselves pretty stuck.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So that massive, look at us, and then you've got 4 months of
good growth, as I call it. Yeah, or
medical insurance to pay, and all
sustainable, considered growth. So again, there's lots of opportunity here. You can wake up every day and you can pitch a new piece of business and go to 30 meetings a day. But is that a sustainable way to build a business? No. And I think sometimes it's just that bit of realism.
Well, that's kind of a key word, isn't it? In this, realism. Tempering expectations, because it's very easy to run away with. I've got the greatest.
It really
possible
is. It really is. It really is. Yeah. And as I said, there's lots of in international markets around the world. So many people are talking about the Middle East and the opportunity and. They look at 2 growth markets around the world, the US and here is, on the minds of every significant organization. Yeah. They just don't have the first real idea about how to go about it. And there are an awful lot of people here and willing and ready to give advice, but you'll get 10, 15 pieces of conflicting advice and you don't really know what to do. So we talk about, taking the kind of risk away rather than jumping into the unknown. It's about following a considered methodology, and we guide and we partner with these companies right the way along the journey.
Let me ask you about cash flow. You mentioned you used that rather dirty word a little while ago, but cash flow, kills more growth stories than competition,
really
doesn't it? So how do payment cycles in the Gulf quietly kind of stall companies?
It's significantly, and cash flow isn't an issue. Isn't just an issue for the startups or for the middle of the market. It's a real issue for everybody, actually. And so it's something that needs to be considered. We help to guide the businesses we work with on things like, again, the way you start the business up and the amount of cash you put in to begin with. And obviously, as you then start to scale, we talk about investing behind the phases of growth rather than investing completely upfront. We also help to guide on the types of businesses you would work with and the mix, because I think it's important to have the right mix. So some businesses will be acknowledged as not the quickest payers, others will be much better. So if you keep a good mix, that's a healthy way to look at it.
I love the I love the way you put it.
Yeah.
It's so beautifully done.
Yeah, and I think it's also then just even commercial agreements. So as you go in at the beginning of a relationship, especially if you are world-class, brilliant, you are providing a competitive advantage for a business, then I think you've got, at that moment, when it comes to signing the agreement, you've got the ability to, whether it's putting incentives in for early payments, whether it's staggering payments in different ways. There's different commercial approaches to making sure that you can keep a healthy cash flow. We advise and support in that manner. I think the bad press that we get in this region for that, some of it is merited. I'll talk about some of the things we're doing as an industry to try and challenge that. But at the same time, again, there's difficulties in any business. It's about how you manage those and how you approach those. And I think it's one of the factors of doing business here that can be mitigated if you're smart and you understand the business, understand the market.
We're back to expectations again, aren't
Yep.
we? Yeah. Okay. So, talk to me about the issues, the cash flow issues that you see, that you're trying to mitigate. I suppose the attitude.
Yeah, a little
cash
bit.
flow problems.
Yeah, a little bit. So I think that's more of an industry approach. So we, as part of what we're doing with the business, we launched the Alliance of Independent Agencies just before Christmas. So we've got 25 strong independent agencies in this market around the table. With them, we're looking at a kind of approach where we're starting to connect them together, which is great. So to create a bit of an industry that hasn't been done before here, which surprised me, but it's an important part of our next step. Make sure they get the right trainings, make sure they get the right centralized capabilities, offerings. There's financial incentives for coming together as one, and obviously then we can start to tackle industry issues like cash flows and payments, and it becomes more of a voice and a much stronger, as I said, stronger middle that can approach these things. Because in the future, it is something that needs to be addressed, and it is something, for a healthier business ecosystem. I think everyone understands we need healthier payment terms and commitments.
Well, it's potentially an important contribution, isn't it? That kind of healthy business ecosystem. There was something we've got lots of notes about the things that you do. Lots of what you're putting forward is commonsensical in so many ways.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about common sense. It's uncommon, isn't it? I suppose. But one thing really stood out, and this interests me. I worked for a small publishing company for a long time, and one of the things that was really important to us was, there was editorial here, there was sales here. The wall between them was strong as it needs to be.
Yeah.
Admin in the middle and accounting in the middle. But it was really, really important when there were 10 or 15 people in the business to hire the right people.
Yeah.
Because that was, what you were banking on. And you've said the wrong first hire on the ground can slow everything down.
Yeah.
Which role do companies most often get wrong?
Yeah, quite straightforward. Most of the time, they'll hire a new business person,
right,
to do sales, which immediately sets that business up as a front of house sales house, which is absolutely not what they do. They just want someone to go and run around and find opportunities and bring them back to them, and they'll do the work. And that's a really, in my mind, a bad approach. And you see very often a kind of company launching in this region with a head of sales, or wrapped up in a head of sales, with the view that that person is going to go and get them a load of business and, we'll be fine.
The marketing, the head of business development.
Basically,
kind of role.
Over and over again, you see it. And
Yeah.
that's the advice that's been given. Go and get that person, they're super connected, they know everyone, they'll give you all the work, and you're effectively setting up a sales office, and that, for me, shows you maybe you don't have the intention of building something significant in the region where there is all this opportunity.
Got you. Okay. So what's the right approach then?
So the right approach we recommend, again, we're working now across the board, so with 20 international agencies and then furthermore with the Alliance as well. But the right approach is in capability, so it goes back to that specialist expertise. So if we're going to improve the market, improve the region, ultimately do better work for the brands that we work with, elevate these massive local brands we work with globally, bring international brands into this market, help them thrive, improve the startup ecosystem, look for the next big brands. Ultimately, that's what the agencies are there to do. And if we're going to do that, we need to stop them having to look abroad to find someone to help them. We need to stop them having to search around. And I mean, how many times do you see someone saying, does anyone know an agency that can help me with this? It's like one of the most common questions asked on any forum or and the fact that people have to ask that way, and the fact that people have to go on to Google or ChatGPT to find an agency, shows you there's a massive navigation problem here. And so if we're able to bring specialists and train specialists and get people better and better and better, overall this ecosystem will grow, and it will improve the entire perception of the region externally, and it will encourage much more businesses to do work with companies here rather than having to look internationally for world-class work.
So we're back to another old adage, aren't we? That there is no substitute for local
Absolutely.
knowledge.
Absolutely no substitute.
Yeah.
But combined, I think, as I said, I think acknowledging sometimes when we've mapped the market, which for the first time, that's never been done, which again, sitting in big agency land and kind of not being too aware of what else was going on, what astounded me was that no one had mapped the market. So we did that to look at where white spaces were, to look at where underserviced areas of the business were, to look at where saturated areas were. So we did that first of all. And there are clearly gaps in offerings and needs for brands here, and we were able to define those. And so, again, I think it's that combination of capability where it's missing, or expertise, and local nuance and local know-how.
And you sat in big agency land for a long time,
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah.
So, I mean, the point of this is yours is first-hand experience.
Yeah.
Did it surprise you? Because you were in big agency land for a number of years. How old's Migrate now?
We started in April of last year, so we were still in year one. So it's,
gaining traction, as it were, yourself. Did it surprise you once you kind of, stepped outside? What hit you?
So what hit me, because I think again in legacy, people who've worked here for a long time. Well, when I mentioned some of the agency names that I mentioned to you, the big names, the Ogilvies, the JWTs, these are just the WPP agencies I work with. They're top of mind and easy to find. Yeah. Everyone knows them. I kind of look at it as the tip of the iceberg. Everyone knows what's there. What astounded, and the briefs are generally sent out to those agencies. There's confidence in the global agencies. What astounded me was the lack of knowledge of what's below the surface. And there's been some really good examples of independent agencies here that have recently been purchased. So Tom at Create with Stagwell, there's been a few really good examples of agencies that are born here being acquired. But actually, there's brilliant other agencies here that I'd never heard of. Having worked in the industry for that long, I kind of should have been aware of these agencies. They're 100 people plus, but just never. There was never the profile. And then we got some research, which I think has been kind of the most interesting opportunity for us, which is we're in the fastest growing advertising market in the world, $9 billion projected to be. And the recent convergence stats showed that the holdcos, or the big industry network agencies, they have 85% of that spend in this region. Around the world, that's around about 55 to 45, and and the independent agencies continue to grab that. So really, again, if you go back to sort of the purpose of Migrate, it's to see how do we start to, first of all, give brands more choice, more options, more expertise, but also, I think we've got to sort of level the playing field out a little bit.
It needs a bit of democratization, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does.
I suppose.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I evil for the word stranglehold jumped into my mind there?
I don't think it's not even evil. I think it's just the way the industry's
is,
been
yeah.
set up. And to your point about barriers to entry and maybe some negative perceptions or thoughts of why it's quite difficult to do business here. So you've got on one hand people, people don't necessarily want to start their own agency or don't have the ability to scale it. And then you've got on the other hand the big international independents maybe not moving into the market as fast because of misconceptions. So I think it's just a legacy. I think it's just the way it's always been. And so yeah, we're sort of putting our head up to see if we can change that a bit.
Giving it a little kick.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I think support. Actually, I think it's to say we're proud. I have a brilliant career in the top. I think in most industries, I think where you can start to influence is probably more in the middle now, and especially when we're going through the evolution of technology and AI, and as I said, a fragmented need and fragmented industries. Right? I say that one agency. How can an agency one minute work in education and be brilliant at that, and the next minute be selling cars, the next minute work for government? It's too much, right?
It's a very good question. Yeah, that's something that's bugged me for years. Look, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. This is one of those it's a terrible thing to do, but I've got one question I really wanted to ask you. If a company has traction, feels stuck, what's the first question, whether it's uncomfortable or not, that leadership should ask?
If they feel stuck.
If they feel stuck, you've got some traction, but you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds obvious, and I will go around it, so I won't forget the question. But what we do immediately with any business that are coming into the market or that we start to work with who are facing that difficulty, is we bring it right back to a go-to-market plan. So when we do a go-to-market plan, we map out the phases of growth very, very clearly, and we're realistic with those phases of growth as well. So it's we go through a whole premise of what's their positioning, what's the type of businesses they're going to be able to service. We look at growth in 5 areas. We look at growth with who are their current clients and how do we maximize the growth of that. Everyone's very keen to go and pitch the new stuff, but a lot of the time in properly partnering with companies, you're able to find the growth there. We look at new business in very, very specific categories. We're very kind of razor focused on where the types of businesses you should work with. We then do partnership structures, so we then build kind of other agencies that work together, so that fuels the growth opportunities. We look at people mapping for them, so we help them to look at who the next hires should be over the next 2 to 3 years and start to identify them. And then we build their kind of PR, their own PR, their brand, their appearance in the market. So I would always look at someone that's struggling and say, do you have a plan like that? Do you know what the next 3 years of business looks like? Maybe you're where you need to be, but your expectations are too high. Maybe we just need to pull on a few of those different growth levers. A lot of companies will have a business plan. Do they have a growth plan? And so, yeah, a lot of the work we're doing with companies that are maybe more stuck is going into that kind of real laser-focused growth planning. So it's not about throwing a dart at the dartboard and seeing what sticks, which is the problem you get into when you start to panic.
All too often.
It's about hitting the bullseye and then hitting everything around the bullseye again and again and again, and then moving forward. And then you can go outside of that bullseye afterwards, but not everywhere at once, if that makes sense.
I like the dance analogy. It works for me, for sure. More than 10 seconds, but I'll let you off. And I think that's the Instagram reel from this discussion, probably. Nick Walsh, founder and CEO of Migrate. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Tim. Great to see you.
Appreciate you coming in. This is Mirror Business FM.